Welcome to the Monday edition of the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. Hope you had a fantastic weekend and got out there and enjoyed the pre-Christmas rush. It was busy out on the city streets on the weekend. It was out on Saturday, and the roads weren't necessarily packed with people, but I was trying to get some of my Christmas shopping done, and I'll tell you, I went into a mall in Bedford, and it was packed. Mind you, I didn't get there until later in the afternoon. Probably my fault. But it was busy, which I sure bodes well for the people that are trying to run stores and such in that facility. So it is in full effect, folks. We know that this is the big week, right? This is the Black Friday week, the week that people look forward to, although kind of think that Black Friday's kind of a whole month now, not just a day, but it was certainly busy out there. Before we get any further, drive in this morning, at least my drive in this morning on the 102 was a bit of a bother, to say the least. There was a pretty serious accident on Lacewood this morning out by the Clayton Park Shopping Centre, and that drove some traffic out onto the highway. So it was a bit laborious coming in this morning. I hope everybody's all right, and I hope that you managed to get to work on time. And very quickly, before we get into our first segment of the day, a happy and safe dumping day for those in areas 33 and 34 today. Here's hoping for big catches and that everybody comes home safe. That's the most important thing for all of those fishers that are heading out into the most lucrative, I think it is, the most lucrative two fishing areas in our province. And of course, this is the run up to the Christmas season, right? And again, hoping they get some big catches out there. And if you were downtown in Halifax this weekend, you know it was a busy place with all of the fun and frivolity that is the curling trials that are underway at the Scotiabank Centre. Saw some of the coverage on television. Haven't gotten down to the event yet. I hope to this week. But it looked great. The facility looked great, and HRM was on full display, so to speak, at least on the coverage that I saw. So congrats to everybody that's been involved with that, and been some good curling. Rachel Holman's streak came to an end last night. That's something that the sports writers are writing about today and putting Halifax right dead center on the map. It is Monday, and that means one thing here on the Todd Veinotte Show, and it's time for Councillors on the hot seat. A pair of HRM councillors have made some time for us today and are sitting in the studio as we start the work week, and there's a lot of things to talk about. We're going to open up those telephone lines right now, 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. If you have a question for our two councillors, first introductions, and I will begin with District 11, which is, of course, Spryfield, Sambro Loop, and, of course, now the Deputy Mayor. That's kind of a new title for you, isn't it, Patty Cuttell?
That's a very fresh title. Not even a week yet, but very. It means a lot that my council colleagues elected me to this position, and I really look forward to working with the mayor and council and residents over the next year. Well, I'm deputy mayor and representing Halifax with pride.
And in the other corner, I'll say, wearing his best Boston Bruins shirt, as is the tradition here. That, of course, is District 2 Councillor from Lawrencetown, the Lakes, Chezzetcook, Eastern Shore, David Hendsbee. David, how are you?
Good morning, Dan. Just doing fine, sir.
You were very gentle with me today. Before the show, we were talking hockey like we usually do when Mr. Hendsbee comes in, and the Boston Bruins sitting a full 5 points ahead of the Toronto Maple Leafs, who, by the way, are in the basement of the Atlantic Division right now. And you were saying that you were surprised that the Bruins are they at least at this point.
Yeah, they're a quarter of the way through the season and sitting on the top of the division up there with Detroit, which is surprising as well. And even Montreal's playing well. I hate to say that, but it is autumn. The leaves are falling.
I think he just waits for it. I think he drives in. I'm going to get Dan this way today. Anyway, 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255 is the number if you have a question for our two councillors. They'll be here for the next 60 minutes, but I will urge you to get your calls in early so that we don't disappoint you to start your work week. Of course, we saw the start of budget deliberations at City Hall this week. As I understand it, the next meeting is the 9th of December. Am I wrong?
Correct.
Okay, so it's the 9th of December. I guess the big nugget, at least for me, that came out of the first rounds of discussion was that Mayor Fillmore's motion to have city staff go back and for lack of a better term, redo their homework and come back with a more bare bones budget, including a 1/3 reduction in the climate tax and some fees reductions and such. I guess, David, we'll start with you. Your thoughts on that 10.5% increase that we're staring down right now and the start of budget deliberations.
Well, as you stated, we're just starting the deliberations. We got another 2 or 3 months yet to go. We won't be setting a tax rate till normally late March to early April. So we still got hours and hours and hours and days and days and days of debates yet to go. And once the business units come in and talk about their budget plans for the year, then we can try and figure out where do we need to shave things off and stuff. So, but I was talking to you earlier about where our revenues are from, and I just want to do a brief recap on that. Our property tax, we get 71% of our gross revenues from property tax. We get 7% from the de-transfer tax. We get 5% from the payment in lieu of taxes. We have 2% from the tax agreements for like Irving Shipyard and the International Airport Authority. We have transfers from the other governments, 2%. We have 2% from revenue, from interest, 4% on our transit fares, 5% from other fees. That'd be from our parking tickets to building permits and zoning letters and vending licenses, and another 3% from miscellaneous revenue. So we don't have very much in regards to have the liquidity and trying to raise more money, especially when the province has put a freeze on our development charges and stuff. So we can't go and charge more at that aspect. So we're trying to find other ways to either raise revenues creatively, or we have to make those significant expenditure reductions.
Deputy Mayor Cuttell, your thoughts on the budget process thus far, at least?
So, Councillor Hendsbee, raises some good points. A recent study showed that Halifax relies on property tax significantly more than other municipalities across the country. And when you kind of look at the history of property tax and kind of municipal finances, it was never really designed to pay for big infrastructure projects. And, with all the growth we're experiencing, there's a lot of work that needs to be done, not only in building infrastructure, but in increasing our services to meet the demands of a growing population. So, for sure, I feel we're in a conundrum. We really need a different kind of fiscal framework if the municipality is going to meet the demands of the province and growing our city, doubling our population. We're going to have to, come to some other kind of fiscal arrangement. Otherwise, we can't expect the taxpayers to pay for that. There's this idea that growth is supposed to pay for growth, and that's part of what the development charges are. And we have amongst the lowest development charges, again, across the country. And, even without the freeze, they weren't keeping pace with the amount of investment needed to upgrade our road infrastructure, our water and sewer infrastructure, our, things like bus rapid transit, improving our transit system. So, that's something serious that we have to look at. We have to talk to the province about. There was some good news in the federal budget around money toward municipalities and infrastructure. So we'll still have to wait and see how we can tap into that. But those are certainly things we'll be looking at as a way to try to mitigate the cost escalation we're seeing.
I've asked all councillors since we started to get an idea of what we were looking at least at the beginning for an increase in taxes, if they have any golden gooses, any areas that they're not willing to touch when we get down to sharpening the pencils and get down to those line items. And I'll stay with you, Deputy Mayor. Is there anywhere that you're not willing to go to reduce that number?
Oh, yeah, it's very difficult. I mean, one of the things we're considering is kind of keeping expenditures at the same levels as last year. And I know in District 11, and not just District 11, but across the municipality, transit is one of those areas that people really want to see improvements to the number of buses, the timing of buses, the quality of service. They're expanding routes. We haven't really added any new routes yet. Travel patterns have changed. For me, cuts to transit will be hard, but not supporting service level enhancements to transit will be hard as well, because I see that as such a key issue, not only in helping people get around and get to work and kind of support transportation around our city, but also for addressing things like congestion. As the city grows, congestion's not going to get better, and we can't add new roads. So, we need to look at other solutions. So transit is one of those things that I feel is critical at this point.
Hendsbee, I think I've been listening to you on this show for, I don't know, has it been 20 years?
A little more.
And I know that a 10.5% increase would be a tough sell for you in your district because of the whole urban-rural thing. Is A, do you have any golden gooses that you're not willing to go at? And B, is what are you hearing from your constituents about this increase?
Well, they're not enthusiastic with the increase, but my sacred golden goose, I guess you could say, would be the tax relief programs and grants we have for not-for-profit organizations and community charities. They're hard enough time for them to do their own fundraising and keep themselves going, but we do have a tax relief program. We just modified the program just last year, and some of our community service organizations are now paying a marginal tax, which they never had to pay for in the past, and they're finding that difficult just to pay whether 10% or 12% of the property tax bill that they're now paying. So it's difficult, and I want to make sure we don't inflict any more pain onto them.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. It's Monday. Let's go right to the phones and welcome Ron to the show. Ron, how are you?
Hi, not too bad.
Your question,
Good
please.
time to phone in, because congratulations to Patty. She's in my district.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah. I just wanted to ask about the speed bumps in the city here, and in comparison to what Doug Ford is doing in Ontario, where he's about to spend $210 million on speed bumps and other things to take away from the cameras that he put up there. So he's taking down the cameras, he's putting in all these other devices, a lot of money, and I was just wondering if anybody knows how much it costs to put in one speed bump in the. Do you know any idea what that costs?
Yeah, so it depends on whether the speed bumps are being put in with a street recapitalization or if they're being put onto kind of an existing street. But my recollection, and I was going to say, don't quote me on this, but I'm on the radio. I think it's about $30,000. That would include, about that. So I'd have to go back and look. That might be, I'm thinking about a particular street. I can certainly go back and look at that. But I will say that out of all the phone calls and emails I get, one of the top 3 issues I have is around speeding, particularly in neighborhoods. And I have a number of residential streets in District 11 looking for traffic calming. And I'm a bit disappointed at the moment with the capital budget, because I'm only getting one street, traffic calming for one street, which just really doesn't cover the demand.
So it must have cost an awful lot of money, because I don't go to Dartmouth much, but when I was over there a couple of years ago, I was in some neighborhoods there, and they were everywhere. So everywhere there, everywhere in Halifax, it must be, how many do you think are in the city? But 15,000 or something?
I don't know. All I know is that in 2020, when I was elected the first time around, there were no speed bumps in Spryfield, and there were none, and that had to do with the policy on how speed bumps were requested, and we've modified that, and so we're starting to see some traffic calm streets in Spryfield, but I don't know how many traffic calm streets there are in total in the city.
Councillor Hendsbee, not a lot of speed bumps out in your district?
No, they just started. We just took over some territories from the province. We now take over the western part of Lawrencetown, Lake Echo, Mineville, and at the time East Preston was a part of my district, but now it got changed with the recent boundary adjustments. But I have some in Lawrencetown and some in Lake Echo, and I have people in Mineville asking for some on the main drag because there's just a lot of people just speeding everywhere. But it's kind of odd that I got people asking for them and not wanting to get rid of them.
902, thanks, Ron. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. We'll take our first break. Councillors on the Hot Seat continues. You're listening to The Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Holstrand. Back in minutes. All right, welcome back. Councillors on the Hot Seat continues. We're very pleased to welcome into the studio today the Councillor of District 11 and, of course, the newly elected Deputy Mayor. That's Patty Cuttell. And from District 2, David Hendsbee. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Back to the phones and welcome Peter to the show. Peter, how are you?
Fine, thank you, and thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
My question is this, and I understand the challenges and difficulties around the city's designated encampments, and I'm aware of the action taken on Lower Flynn Park. But I do not understand, if this was the city's decision to designate local parks as suitable for encampments, why the city cannot make the effort to ensure that these encampments don't look like a landfill. I mean, it's absolutely disgraceful driving by Flynn Park to see the overflowing garbage cans, abandoned shopping carts, abandoned campsites, and it's just left there. No one does anything about it. And I know the response will be, well, we send a truck in every week to empty the garbage and so on and so forth. But that's not adequate. They should be there every single day cleaning up that area. It's absolutely disgraceful. And I just don't understand why the city views that as being acceptable. So I'm really interested to hear what the councillors have to say. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Peter. Appreciate it. We'll start with you, Councillor, or Deputy Mayor. I got to get used to that title, Deputy Mayor Cuttell.
Me too. Yeah, thank you for the call. And, I drive by Flynn Park almost every day on my route to City Hall. And I too have noted the accumulation of garbage and whatnot. I also see teams in there, more than once a week, quite frequently. And it is an ongoing situation, as somebody leaves the camp, a lot of their stuff gets left behind. We are moving a lot of people, thanks to the province, into shelters or alternative forms of housing, or even finding apartments for folks. But the waste management is certainly something. Our team, our homelessness team, is rather small and lean. We don't have a big budget to support this. It's not a core service of the municipality, but it is something we've recognized a need for and a responsibility, and we've stepped up because the situation a couple of years ago was really quite desperate. It is improving, and part of it is that originally there weren't supposed to be more than 4 to 6 tents per encampment, and as we've been designating sites, we've seen kind of a concentration happening in those sites that are still active. It's a conversation that we're having right now about how we continue to fund our homelessness team, and I can tell you there's not a lot of resources there, and I know they do their best, and it's not a great situation for anybody.
Councillor Hendsbee.
It is a difficult situation. It was just a transient community, the people coming and going in these camps and stuff. Some of them are carrying their life's belongings with them, and some people are collecting things along the way. And it is difficult, as they come and go, to clean up the sites. It is a situation we're trying to keep on top of, but as Patty, the Deputy Mayor, said, is that we don't have the resources to do that on a daily basis, but that's something that we should talk to our team about and see what we can make improvements. But as we cut down the number of encampments, so then we have to close them off and then try to rehabilitate the sites themselves, try and clean up the land from all the stuff that's been spilt over or trampled down. It takes time to rehabilitate our parks, so those things we need to work on.
Councillor Hendsbee, I think was it the last meeting or maybe the meeting before Council approved the new framework for homelessness in HRM, and the presentation that you all took in said that the plan, at least at this point, is to close the remaining two, there's three now, but Flynn's in the process of being closed, but the remaining two designated sites within the next 18 to 24 months, and that there were more spaces, indoor spaces, available for the 45 people that are currently residing in the parks. Is 2 years seem long?
It can be, but the problem is we don't know how many people are still coming in from other places. So, we're trying to deal with the population we have now, but as more people keep coming in, it's kind of difficult to try and keep a track. We have the street navigators trying to keep in contact with these folks, trying to have their contact information, where they might be living at or where they're staying in different parks. I noticed the ones on Barrington Street underneath the McDonald Bridge ramp, there's a lot less tents there this past week than there was 2 weeks ago. And but there is still time to close the camps, but I think that the year and a half, 2 years is also part of the rehabilitation time as well.
Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, so one of the key points here is that it's not a static number, right? It is a fluctuating number, and one of the important pieces is our work with the province in ensuring that there's alternative places for people to go, and that the people who are in the encampments are going to be accepted in those spaces. Often there's people with high acuity needs, and there aren't always appropriate places for them to go, and so it's a challenging situation. And at the end of the day, I think we're doing the best we can with the resources that we have. Again, it's not one of our housing and mental health and addictions are not a core service of the municipality. So it's really how we work in partnership with the province, and seeing the province continue to do the great work they're doing and kind of standing up alternative places for people.
Councillors, on the hot seat's going to continue after we get an update on the news here at the bottom of the hour. There's a few lines open if you want to get in. 902-405-6000, 1-877-80. I'm looking at that number right today. It's Monday, right? 1-877-801-8255. There you go. Thanks, Vanessa. And we'll keep those lines open through the news break. And if you have a question for these two councillors, this is a golden opportunity. Again, let's make sure you get it right. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. We're back after the news. All right, welcome back. This is Councillors on the Hot Seat. In the studio from District 11, that's Spryfield, Sambro Loop, and the new Deputy Mayor, and that's Patty Cuttell. On the other side of the table, District 2, Lawrencetown, the Lakes, Chezzetcook, Eastern Shore, and David Hendsbee. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Deputy Mayor, you were mentioning before we came on the air that you attended the Christmas tree lighting this past weekend.
I did, and despite the weather, I was amazed at how many people came out to catch the show and do the big sing, and fortunately a little malfunction with the Christmas tree lights, probably due to the weather or all the water that was around, but other than that, it was great to see so many people out.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Let's go back to the phones and welcome Bill to the show. Bill, how are you?
Not too bad. Appreciate you taking my call for me. I got a question.
Sure.
I'm not a computer whiz. I'm not a scientist. I'm just a truck driver. These bike lanes, what brings more money into the city? Bike lanes, or people bringing their cars in to different events and parking? Straightforward question. What brings money into the city?
I'm happy to tackle that one. That's only part of the, part of the question is, when it comes to what brings in more money. I don't think that's the starting point. For me, one of the things that we're seeing on the peninsula is a significant increase in housing, particularly through multi-unit developments, high-rise apartments. Also, the increase in as of right, where we're seeing 4-unit and 8-unit buildings going up, and with that, there needs to be a different way of getting around. If you think about all those people in those apartments, if they need to rely on their car to go everywhere on the peninsula, that's only going to add to the congestion. And that, I feel it's our responsibility to provide alternative ways for people to get around. And that's the starting point for me. It's not about how much money do these things bring in, but how does it facilitate people getting around, particularly as more and more people are moving to the peninsula?
Yes, I understand that. Also, too, I know they want to make it hard for people driving trucks and driving cars in Halifax. They have big events in Halifax, Scotia Metro Center, prime example. Beautiful place. And there's Siddle Hill, over 50 parking spots that are gone because of bike lanes. Now, common sense tells me if they're looking for money for the city, I don't understand all this politician stuff. I really don't. I believe in common sense. If they're going to put these bike lanes in at a cost of millions of dollars, they could have just put lines like they did in Spryfield, paint the lines maybe 3 feet out. If you need 7 feet from the curb out to get a bike down the bike lane, I don't think you should be driving a bike. But also, too, I have more people complain about coming to Halifax. Parking is a big thing. And they can't ban the cars and trucks from delivering in Halifax. But they make it sure as heck, make it difficult to get around. And they wonder why people are upset with this no right turn here, turning roads into no right turn on red, which is good. But also, too, down Veinotte Street, right down the Coventry Road, just past, I believe I'm not too sure, at the very end of it, it turns into a one-way heading north. Now, I drive a truck, and I don't have any issues with that, but it turns into a one-way heading north, and that's been changed since then because you can't turn there with these trucks. All I'm asking is some common sense. They want to spend money on bike lanes and all this stuff, and then I don't understand the policies. I really don't. But like I said, common sense will tell me that put it where it's most needed. Okay?
Yeah, and it is common sense. You're right. Like, we do need trucks to be able to travel around the peninsula, to do deliveries to our businesses, to move goods, to help people move into their new apartments. We need spots for moving trucks. So, I don't think it's one or the other. As far as I'm concerned, it's really about how do we make it all work. And if there's particular intersections that you're finding difficulty with, then please call your councillor, call me, and I'm happy to look into that. I do recognize that trucks need to be able to maneuver safely and freely in the downtown, and bike lanes shouldn't be impeding that.
Councillor Hendsbee, I think it was the debate over Morris Street when council was debating that, making that one way and building a protected bike lane there. You mentioned during that debate, and I'm going to paraphrase here, because it was a while ago, that we don't need these gold-plated bike lanes. We don't need the Cadillac. We can get away with just some painting, and that would be good enough.
That's correct. I think that's one of the things we're looking at, is reevaluating the design parameters of these bike lanes. I've always liked to have paved shoulders and a painted line. Let's start with that first. And if there's any other problematic areas, if they need more protection, like the concrete curb separation, then we'll look at it at that time. But let's build the network first, as simple as possible, and then go from there. But the Morris Street, I said the biggest thing there is just cut the trees. We need, if we want to have wide lanes in there, we want two-way traffic, we want the bicycle lanes, then the trees got to go. Simple as that. We're doing the same thing on Roby Street.
And there's people protesting that.
Yeah, but we want to have that corridor for bus rapid transit to get up and down through, and the problem is it's a bottleneck there, and that pinch point has to be corrected. The only way to do that is remove some of those century-old trees. So it's going to be difficult, but it needs to be done.
902-405-6000. You want to comment? 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255 to the phones. And we go to Jim. Jim, how are you?
Good morning, everybody. How are you?
Mr. Hoskins, how are you?
Good. I've got two quick questions. Maybe I'll have to end it with just one, but I will ask two. I spoke, as you know, Dan, on Friday with Premier Houston in regards to stronger mayor powers.
You did?
That's been parked on the side by the Premier, so that puts that to rest for at least the next 4 years, I think. But he said he was going to sort of monitor that particular issue. Anyway, I would ask both councillors, why do we need a mayor with this council? And why do we need, in particular, a deputy mayor with this council, when it's quite evident to a lot of people there are arguments for and against on both sides, but there are a lot of people out here that do not see Mayor Fillmore able to get his platform and plan for this city, HRM, put forward with this council as the mandate that he was given by the majority of voters. My second question, it can be very quickly to Councillor Cuttell. I've sent emails to your email address. I know you're a busy councillor, but would you please take a second look in regards to how crappy Spry Center has become in the last year or so?
Thanks, Jim.
Yes. I said to Dan when I saw your name on the list here, I go, oh, he's going to call me about the Captain William Spry Center. And there we go. Yes, that is a serious concern for me, and something I probably contact Parks and Rec about every week. That facility was going to undergo some major renovations, and there's been a change in scope on that work because the Spry Arena also needs to be replaced. And so right now there's somebody hired to take a look at combining those facilities and how that might be done, whether it all gets rolled into one facility, whether it's two facilities in a different configuration. So in the meantime, the Captain Spry Center, it's like keeping Band-Aids on that thing. But I agree. I think, whether it's getting a light bulb fixed, whether it's the hot water issue, whether it's a broken elevator, whether it's, fitness equipment in the gym not getting repaired. It is a constant battle, and I am aware, and I am forwarding all concerns I receive about the Captain William Spry Center to the executive director and facilities manager. I did get good news last week that new equipment is coming into the gym, but it's still not good enough. That facility, in my opinion, needs a general manager. Most of our facilities don't have general managers. So, but the situation there is getting dire enough that I think it's something we need to look at. I'll just quickly comment on your the strong mayor powers, and perhaps Councillor Hendsbee has some comments on this too. But HRM wasn't set up with a strong mayor model. It was set up with a mayor, a general mayor, and then councillors for each district. And each councillor was also elected on a particular platform with particular priorities. And what I like most about municipal government is it's still a true form of democracy. And more and more we're seeing a consolidation of power in kind of democratic states and governments. And I think while there might be something gained, there's also something lost. And at the end of the day, I'm very much in support of a municipal council that remains nonpartisan, that remains representative of all the districts in the municipality, where we can have good debate and make collective decision making.
Councillor Hendsbee.
Well, we're not elected on a slate. We're individual candidates in each of our own districts. The mayors may have particular platforms, but they're not necessarily the councilors' platforms. There might be some continuity or some familiarity with some of them. Some of them might be totally opposed to certain issues. So In regards to special mayor powers, I don't think it's necessary. We have a council. It's 16 councillors plus the mayor, so 17 in total. I think we can work things out. I was part of the council when there was 23 members of councillors, and before that, I was in Halifax County with 25 members of council. So large councils can work. It's just that they've been marginalized over the last number of years, reduced in size. But if you also look at the legislature, if you ask me, perhaps there should be some seat reductions in there.
Just very quickly before we take our break, Deputy Mayor, Jim also asked why we need to have a Deputy Mayor. For those that don't know, what function do you serve?
Yeah, so, if the mayor is away, I stand in for the mayor, and like everybody, sometimes the mayor also needs a break. I also liaise between the mayor and the mayor's office and council, and just support the mayor in his duties. So he gets invited to a lot of events, and so I help out with that as well. And it's really a role that's there to support the functioning of council in the mayor's office.
Chair meetings, those kind of things, in the stead of the mayor, right?
Exactly.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. We're going to take a break. Councillors on the Hot Seat continues on the other side. This is the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. We're back in minutes. All right, just a few minutes left here in our weekly sit-down with our regional councillors. Just to refresh who's in the studio, we have District 11's Patty Cuttell and District 2's David Hendsbee. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Let's get right to the phones and welcome Kim to the show. Kim, how are you?
Pretty good. How are you?
Good. Your question, please.
I live on Sylvia Avenue in Spryfield. I live right next door to the high school, Dalhousie.
Yep.
And Sylvia's turned into a raceway. The young people with their cars and everything. But I'm wondering, there's no school zone signs on Sylvia or anywhere on the Heron Cove Road.
Yeah.
Down around this area.
Yeah, I can take that one.
I'm wondering why there's no speed bumps on this road.
Yes. Hello. School zones don't apply to high schools. This is an avenue I have been down many a time. The school zones apply to the elementary schools and to the junior highs, but not the high schools. If you were listening earlier, I was talking about my disappointment in the capital plan right now, that there's only one new street in my district that's getting traffic calming this coming year, and you'll be very glad to know it's Sylvia Avenue. That is something I've been advocating for 4 years now. So that included an assessment and then a reassessment and then some enforcement data, and it's been a process, but I'm really happy to tell you that that street is scheduled to get traffic calming in the next budget.
And there's another question about the high school. 2 weeks ago, it looked like there was a formed fight that was right out at the end of my driveway. There was at least 20 children or high school students, and they went at it for a while. Me and residents around here called the police, and no response at all.
Really?
Really?
Wow.
Well, I'm happy to look into that. That doesn't sound very good. First, I'm hearing about it. If you could send me an email with some of the details and perhaps the date and time, that would be appreciated.
Thanks, Kim.
It happens quite frequently.
Really?
But thank you for your time. Yes, there's fighting over there all the time.
I appreciate the call, Kim.
Thank you. You guys have a great day.
You too.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. This is gonna be Dan sitting on his front porch in his rocker. But there have been high schools around for a very long time. And going back into my high school days, we had cars and we had souped up cars and everything else. Why is it necessary now to put speed bumps in front of a high school when for the last 50 years that it's been okay?
I can't speak to the last 50 years, but I can tell you that, there seems to be an increase in the incidence of stunting and speeding, and, and also, enforcement is spread thinly. That's the other thing. Our traffic unit is currently kind of reestablishing itself and rebuilding itself. The officers that are in the traffic unit, they're handing out a lot of tickets, but we had a bit of a dip in kind of the priority placed on traffic enforcement, and just recently talking to some police officers, we're rectifying that now, and so it's a combination of enforcement, but speed bumps take away the need for enforcement, right? And so police resources they're very expensive, and when it comes to traffic enforcement or attending to another incident, depending on the incident, that takes priority. So when we know that there's a street that has a chronic speeding issue, putting in traffic calming helps alleviate the need to have enforcement there, which is the more expensive way of managing that traffic issue.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Let's go to the phones and welcome Paul to the show. Paul, how are you?
Great, thanks. Just a quick question to the councillors.
Sure.
Last March, I got my car booted up in Bears Lake, and I called in at the time, and I had done a little research myself. It was just the exorbitant price of the boot was like $131. That was with tax, right? And I did a little research at that time before I called, and Moncton had a bylaw they passed, I think it was 2018, that the maximum fine that first they had to get a license to operate in the city, and two, the maximum fine they came up with was like $45. And that was, I hadn't received, the counselor at the time, they said, well, they didn't know how they came up with that number for the companies, parking companies. And the second question was, are these companies, I think there's two of them operating, are they like on a yearly contract, or is that like something, they get a 5-year contract? And that's it. Thanks.
Thanks, Paul. Booting, this comes up every year, it seems, doesn't it?
It's a popular issue for the previous council, Lisa Blackburn, always hated the booted things. These are more on private property lots and stuff like that. They're not being booted on municipal properties. It's more the private property parking lots and stuff. So they have more control of their own rates they can charge and stuff. I don't think we have any bylaw to control that or not. But if you may say that Moncton may have one, that's something we may want to look into if there's an opportunity to try to have some rationalization of those boot fines.
Yeah, I do remember this came before. It might have been Transportation Standing Committee, or I can't remember which committee exactly. But we did do a jurisdictional scan, and we heard from the companies that do the booting as well, like the companies who are hired by private properties to manage illegal parking in their lots. And it was really hitting a compromise between them being able to have a viable business versus what was, acceptable to, or, to people in terms of paying fines, and to the private properties that are continuing to have illegal parking on them. It was a big discussion. I can't remember exactly how we came up with that price, but there is a staff report, and if you send me an email, I'd be happy to send you that. Try to dig up that staff report.
Thanks, Paul. We're just about out of time. David, what's happening up in District 2?
Well, it's the season to be jolly, I guess you can say. This Sunday, the 30th of November, Sheet Harbor is going to be having its Christmas on Main Street from 2 o'clock in the afternoon till 5. Also tree lighting at 6 o'clock on Porter's Lake that night. Also coming up on Friday, the 5th of December, tree lighting at Lake Echo with fireworks. And there's also tree lighting and lobster tree lighting and the Christmas parade in Musquodoboit Harbor on Saturday the 6th, and on also another big tree lighting in Lake Charlotte on the 7th, with also a fireworks show.
Busy times.
Busy times. Yeah.
And in District 11?
Well, as has been mentioned a couple of times this morning, it is dumping day, and I know the fishermen out of Sambro will be heading to the water, the fishermen and fisherwomen. So I want to wish them a safe and successful season. We have the Spryfield Santa Claus Parade coming up on Sunday, which will be the 52nd year. It's the longest continuously running Santa Claus Parade east of Montreal. So something that we're very proud of in Spryfield, and it's always well attended. So I look forward to seeing everybody out there on Sunday. And all kinds of smaller community events happening. It is the season. There's tree lightings, there's crafters markets. There's one coming up at the Herring Cove Community Centre, the new Herring Cove Community Centre, which I'm looking very forward to attending.
That's we're out of time. Holy smokes. I don't see you both before the holiday season hits. Have a Merry Christmas. Deputy Mayor, appreciate your time today.
Thank you, Dan.
And Councillor Hendsbee, always a pleasure.
Joyeux Noel.
We'll see you soon. We're going to stop, take a break. On the other side of it, we're going to keep those telephone lines open. It's time for the first open hour of the week. Heard something today that you disagree with, maybe you agree with. Here's an opportunity for you to talk about it. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. The open hour after the news. Welcome back to the Todd Veinotte Show, the Monday edition. This is, of course, time now for the open hour. The telephone lines wide open, 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Heard something during our last segment with our councillors on the hot seat that you'd like to comment on. Here's a golden opportunity. Again, that's 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. I mentioned my commute in this morning, and I know it was abnormal for a Monday because of that scary incident on Lacewood Drive this morning that you just heard in the news. The update is that Lacewood is now open, but has been closed and was closed for a majority, if not all, of the morning commute today. And that, of course, had people either listening to the traffic updates or seeing the news stories on their favorite sites or looking at their Google Maps and trying to avoid that. And that drove a lot of the traffic that normally would travel down Lacewood on towards Bayview and then onto the Bedford Highway or down Lacewood to Dunbrack and then across to the 102. You know what I'm talking about. Just onto the 102 from like the Bears Lake entrance. And it was quite busy there today. Now, if you were listening to our program on Friday, when we were having a conversation with the Premier of Nova Scotia, Tim Houston was in studio for an hour on Friday, and we talked about traffic, and we talked about congestion, and he said that the congestion is terrible, and that he was looking to work with council. I say that with a smirk on trying to find solutions to that problem. I don't know about you, but I've noticed an increase in traffic over the last month and a half, maybe. And this is just anecdotal. This is just my observations out on the roads every day. And it seems to be coinciding with an increase in a number of businesses, including Tim Houston's provincial government, that are asking people to start spending more time at the office and less time working from home. There is a noticeable difference in the amount of traffic on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday coming into HRM than on Friday for sure, with the exception of the incident today on Mondays. This company is now requiring people to come to the office 4 days a week, and in the new year, that's coming up to 5. I know we've had discussions on work from home before. But in these tough financial times, in situations where we are looking, and I'm thinking at the municipal level, we're looking at budget savings. We know the mayor has asked city staff to come back with a more bare bones budget than they already did. And one of the caveats of that the mayor put into the motion that was unanimously approved by council would to be to install or institute a hiring freeze. Now, wouldn't it, just think about this for a minute, wouldn't it be something to consider in having not all, particularly the frontline people, but the others that aren't front-facing within the municipality, to have them work from home and maybe get rid of some of that space as a solution to this never-ending financial crunch that HRM's under? Just something I was thinking about while I was waiting in traffic this morning. Might be something you want to comment on as well. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Let's go to the phones. Welcome Sean to the show. Sean, how are you?
I'm good, Dan. How about yourself?
I am okay. What's on your mind today?
Just two things quickly, actually. Yesterday I was just relaxing and scrolling through X there, and I noticed something kind of weird. The Liberal Party official X account, I just happened to be on there, and I clicked on there, and they're based out of the United States, that account, the official Liberal Party of Canada. Their account is actually based out of United States. So then I was like, well, let me just look a little further. And I looked at the NDP one, and the NDP is also based out of the United States. And then so I was like, well, geez, let me check the conservative one, and they're based out of Canada. And then so I was like, well, let me just go a step further. And I went on the CBC News main yellow checkmark site, and their account is based out of the United States. Does that make any sense? Well, you're in broadcasting and media. Maybe can you answer that for me? And just
well, Sean, I'm on the and I'm using my phone. I'm not using my computer, but I'm using my phone, and I'm on the Liberal. Yeah. You're talking about the Liberal Party of Canada, I assume.
Yes, the federal party.
Where do you see on their site that it's based in the U.S.? I don't see anywhere on here.
So when you go on their official page, you just got to click, like where it says joined December 2020 or whatever it was joined. There's a little arrow. You click that, and it'll actually switch you over to like date joined, count based.
Yeah, no, I can see it. You're absolutely right. I had no idea.
And the NDP is the same thing. And also the CBC News account, the official CBC News account, is also based out of the United States. But the Conservative Party is based, and I checked the Green Party, and the Green Party is based in Canada. Their account is based in Canada as well. And I haven't got to the block, but I just found that really, really weird because we have Canadian tech companies that we can contract this work out to because obviously they're busy. They don't have time to run their accounts, I guess. So they subcontract it out, but they're subcontracting theirs to an American company while Conservatives and Green Party are contracting theirs to a Canadian company. And same with the CBC. Like, that one just blows my mind because
Sean,
the CBC is Canadian.
Sean, I just looked at our Twitter page, right? And it also says that it's based in the United States. So
yeah, I was gonna. That's what I was gonna end on with that conversation is ask why your guys is based.
So you were trying to gotcha to Dan on a Monday, were you? Anyway, I don't know why.
No, not gotcha. I just thought maybe you would know.
To be quite honest, because, Sean, I don't, and I certainly will dig into that and try and find out. It might be where the server's hosted. I don't know, but I will. I'll do some digging on our end of things, and I'll let you know.
And the second thing is so Canada just announced that they were spending $24 million to combat youth unemployment in synagogue, right? Which, okay, sounds pretty reasonable. So then I looked in, I said, well, what are the unemployment rates of synagogue? They must be worse than Canada. The youth unemployment rate in Senegal is at like 4%, right? And here in Canada, our own country, the youth unemployment is almost 15%. And here we are donating $24 million of Canadian taxpayer money to combat what doesn't really seem to be that much of an issue. I mean, 4%, yeah, it's a little high, but that's got to be pretty low amongst the world. And then we look at Canada, it's 3 times higher than Senegal, but yet there's no money or nothing to combat unemployment, youth unemployment in Canada. So it just seems like all these things are like, are the Liberal Party really looking out for Canadians' best interest if we're subcontracting their social media to the States, we're sending money abroad for problems that are massive here in this country?
All fair question, Sean. No, I absolutely, and I don't see the 24 million. I don't not suggest you're wrong, but I'll have to do some digging on that one as well. But I will dig into that
thing or whatever.
I will dig into the USA thing to see what's going on, because I can tell you that our social media on our station is done here, like literally in the room next to me.
Your main account.
Yeah,
but your main account is based out of the United States,
which is interesting.
Your company.
Yeah, no, I'm going to look into that.
It just shows you that, like, we're supposed to hate America and buy Canadian, elbows up, but yet every time we turn around, we're using American companies, we're sending money abroad, and it's like, what? But yeah, that's all I got for you, Dan.
All right, man.
Appreciate the time.
Appreciate it.
Good day.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. I see a couple people wanting to talk about Twitter. Maybe they know more than I do with regards to that. I can only speak for what I know is that it's not an American company that's running our social media. It might be where it's hosted, and I said, and I will. I'll dig into that and see why that's the case, but our social media is handled literally a room and a half over from where I am right now. So that's an interesting observation, Sean. I appreciate the call. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. We're back after the break. All right, welcome back. Dan Holstrand along with you here on a Monday. The lines are wide open, 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Let's go right to the phones, and we welcome Gail to the show. Gail, how are you?
Hi, good. I'm great, actually. Happy Monday.
Happy Monday.
I just wanted to call in today because I made that promise to myself. I want to give a shout-out to our lobster fishermen. I just spent the last 8 days, I came back Saturday evening on Cape Sable Island, Barrington Passage, Woods Harbor area. And I do go there frequently through the year, except this summer where I stay, they had no water in their well for over 4 months. So I just am just amazed at what goes on. And the risks involved, the dangers involved, the expense involved. So I had the privilege of attending the fishermen's service on Cape Sable Island and was so moved by the stories shared, the participation by the families, and just the extent of the involvement and the cost. And then went for a drive. One of my friends took me we went from Woods Harbor all the way down to every wharf. And it's just phenomenal, the boats, the equipment, and all the gear, ropes. We don't always think about it. And I'm glad it was mentioned on the news today that it was dumping day, because this little delicacy is known worldwide, and it comes with a cost. And often it can be the father, son, and grandson on these boats. And if there's an accident, it's a huge loss. So I just want to say thank you for all those brave souls. And I really do hope they have a really lucrative season this year. It's when you think being out on that cold water, winds, and no matter what. They go out there and risk that, and, it's a difficult industry, but, a highly regarded one for our province. So I say thank you to the fishermen, to the families that support them. And, I've been on the island on dumping day. I've experienced that and been down on the wharf at 4 or 5 in the morning, and it's really something to see when the boats go out. But I've never been able to be up there early enough for the fishermen's service. So it really, I said I'm going to call the show today because we don't always think about what's involved. So thank you to all those families and fishermen, and thank you for the opportunity to call in.
Well said, Gail. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Can't argue any of the points that Gail raised. Fishermen are a different stock. They are vital to our economy here in Nova Scotia, and that job is a dangerous job. And as I said off the beginning of the show, and I think one of our councillors said it as well, Gail has said it, and I'll say it again, I just hope that everybody gets out, there's no problems, and everybody gets home safe. Because at the end of the day, that's the most important thing, right? 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. To the phones, we welcome Mike to the show. Mike, how are you?
I'm good, buddy. How are you?
I'm well. What's on your mind?
I want to talk about the first guy who called in about, I'm never going to call it X, Twitter,
Okay.
about why the countries show as they do.
Okay.
And I mean, it's a gotcha. Oh my God, the Liberals are based out of the United States. No, what it is, it depends on a whole bunch of factors. So it depends on where was the app originally purchased. So if the Liberal Party, if they're using a PR firm that gets the Twitter account from the United States app store, it's going to show as an American app. It also uses, network traffic to determine where it comes from, and it tries to see if there's a VPN being used, which could be used to shield your IP address.
Okay.
So if it thinks the VPN is being used, which I think maybe government officials would use VPNs because it makes a private connection between two networks, it will default to a different country. Some countries aren't even listed. So if you go and look at places, you'll look at someone's account and it'll say Africa. Well, Africa is not a country. But what they do is there are certain countries that have rules about free speech, and they're worried about identifying people in those countries because then those people can be targeted. So this is luck of the draw, what it's going to say. So when someone crows about, the cons, they're based in Canada, I'd ask why so many Republicans are working for them. But secondly, it doesn't mean anything. You know, the Department of Homeland Security in the States, which is not a great place, it shows it's in Israel. So do we honestly think the Department of Homeland Security is tweeting from Israel? Some people might, but that's what it shows. So they came out and said government accounts will not show where they're actually from.
Thanks, Mike.
And there you go.
I can't argue with it because when it comes to that stuff, I'm a technophobe, right? So,
of course.
Anyway, I appreciate it, sir.
You're welcome, buddy.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. The open hour continues after the news. Welcome back. The Twitter debate rages on. A couple of emails from people explaining how that U.S. tag can come to be. I have reached out to our IT guy just to see if this is the case, but Jennifer sent me a note today that said, what does it mean when a Twitter account is originated from the United States? Number one, the account was created while the user was physically located in the United States. I don't know if that happened with ours. The account owner selected the United States as their country during setup, which is entirely possible, right? A lot of times when you see it, your brain defaults to the United States if you're talking about English or whatever else. Activity patterns suggest a U.S. origin, time zone settings, language preferences, consistency of login locations. 4, does not necessarily mean a person is a United States citizen or currently in the United States. A user might travel, use a VPN, or simply have created an account there long ago. Like I said, when it comes to the inner workings of the apps that we use every day, you're a lot smarter than I am when it comes to that. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Back to the phones, and we welcome Brian to the show. Brian, how are you?
Good, Dan. How are you today?
First-time caller. I appreciate that.
Yes, yeah. I called because I wanted to get on yesterday with the Premier, but the reason I'm calling is we moved from Sackville, Nova Scotia to Yarmouth, and we built a brand new house, and we decided to go totally off-grid. No wires, no connection whatsoever.
Wow. That must have been an undertaking.
Yeah. It was great. It's a retirement home. That was our big plan, to do a homestead and off-grid. Long story short, which I found out was I had a Red Seal electrician do my house. I had the building permits and inspections, but I was shocked to find out that Nova Scotia Power, being a private company, is in the provincial electrical code as the final say for your occupancy permit.
Really?
Yes, that's why I want to talk to the Premier yesterday. I can see them inspecting my house because in case I sell and someone hooks to it, but they came and they started inspecting my solar system that was designed by an electrical engineer in Texas, and they had the final say. I was shocked. I was like, you're a private company. How are you deciding how I power my house or even looking at it?
Right. That doesn't make any sense to me either. One would think it would be some kind of government inspector, right?
Exactly. I had a building inspector here, which was great. I had a Red Seal electrician, did everything. I had the designs for my solar field. We did it ourselves. It's a solar field outside. And I had a fight with Nova Scotia Power to get an occupancy permit.
Did you get it?
I got it eventually, but they wanted me to do a lot of crazy stuff in that backyard. I live on 40 acres, but I was floored that they were on my property because I'm not getting their service. I don't need them.
Well, that's just it.
It's like going to get your MVI and Toyota saying you have to put their tires on.
Right. And it's not, you're not selling power back to them. You're not connected to the grid anyway.
Not connected whatsoever. Nearest pole is 2 kilometers away.
Wow. That's weird.
And isn't it? And that's what everybody said to me when I told them the situation I was in. And everybody's like, well, why are they even there? If I want to burn 200 liters of gas a day to power my house, that's my concern.
Right.
But, yeah. So anyways, I just want to bring that up because you mentioned that the Premier is the
energy minister, yeah, for sure.
Exactly.
Hey, Brian, just a quick question. With how long have you been there now? How long have you been in the house?
Year and a half.
How has the solar panels kept up with your needs? Have you run into any problems, or you got lots of power?
Lots of power. I designed the system for February, so all I need is 6 hours of daylight, not sun, just daylight, and boom.
Wow. Appreciate you bringing that up to us.
Yeah, I'd love for you to keep that in mind next time you ever speak to them.
Right. All right, we'll do that. Brian, appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255 is the number. That really doesn't make any sense to me. And I'm sure somebody out there that may be more plugged in, pun intended, may be able to shed some light on that. But why would Nova Scotia Power have the final say on a private generating system that's not connected to the grid? What do they care? It sounds like our caller went through all of the right steps, right? I mean, having electricians and like the electricians and the electrical inspectors give that their blessing, then why the heck does the utility have a say in it? You're not. I can understand it if you were selling power back to the grid, which some people do, or if you were connected to the grid in some sort of backup system, right? If your solar panels failed and you were able to throw a switch and gain access to the Nova Scotia Power grid, that part I get. But if and we'll take our caller at his word, they're 2 kilometers away from the last pole, not connected to the grid in any sort of way, then why would Nova Scotia Power even care what you were doing? As long as you You weren't, your house was to code, to the electrical code, to building code. Why does the utility have a say in it? 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Let's welcome Len to the show. Len, how are you?
Not too bad. It's kind of a damp day today, but it's Monday, so that's normal. I just want to bring up about three things, and I'll leave it with you. I want to let other callers get on.
Sure.
Number one is I was up there where that terrible accident happened up on Lacewood there and by McDonald's, and I hope to God that poor woman survives this accident, but I know she was seriously injured, and somebody said that she might have been even killed. But I want to bring up one thing that I know it's not going to happen, but I think a law should be passed that people that are walking, while they're walking, that they are not allowed to use their cell phone. I don't know how that could be enforced, but at least if there was a law there, maybe people and these children would stop using their cell phone, because I'm up in that area. I go by there every day, and there's high school students going to Halifax West, and I can guarantee you, and because I see them, they're on their cell phones walking across the street, not looking. But I wish to God there was a law that would tell them that it's against the law to be using your cell phones while you're walking. I hope this poor woman was not using her cell phone when she got hit by that garbage truck. That's terrible. The other thing I want to bring up, too, is that when it comes to the health system, why does the government charge you and I if we go to a gym and we're trying to improve our health? Why are we paying a hospital tax or any kind of tax on our membership? Isn't that sort of discouraging people from, going and exercising like they should to help their health system? I think there should be a law. There shouldn't be any tax on people that are trying to be healthy by going to a gym.
Can't argue that point, Len.
The other thing I want to bring up, one other point, is that these boots that are being put on cars in our city should not be allowed. I don't know if you know this, but the company that gets this money is out in British Columbia, and they won't give you your car back until you pay it on the spot. I don't think that's right. Why should our city lose money because of another place that's 5,000 miles away getting our money for a boot? Anyway, I'll leave all these three things with you.
Appreciate it, Len. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. To Len's point on walking with cell phones, Len, there is a law that prohibits people from driving with a cell phone. It's against the law. There's a law on the books. I see it every day on my drive home and on my drive to work. Every single day. Does not do anything to deter people. Can you imagine the enforcement piece on banning people from walking with a cell phone on? They would just have to just corral people in and just start writing tickets. I don't think that is ever going to happen. And I get where you're coming from, Len. I understand that. I mean, I've been walked into by people that have been on the sidewalk on their phones, and they are not on the same zip code as I'm in or the same postal code that I'm in. But that being said, putting a law in the book and not enforcing it doesn't accomplish anything. And that's what the cell phone driving law is. It's on the book. It rarely gets enforced, and it does do nothing to deter people, because I literally see it every single day on my drive home. Somebody's on their phone. May have rolled down my window a couple of times to remind people of the law. I don't recommend that. We're back after the break. Seems our first-time caller has stirred a couple of people to send us some emails with regards to Nova Scotia Power, and I got this email. It says, "Hey, Dan, I'm an electrician. It's true that Nova Scotia Power is the governing authority on the electrical code. So somebody that works in the industry says that's the case. And I got another email, this one from Colin, says, I looked into this for our new build. The reason I was given was NSP inspects for future connection. If they don't and you go to connect later on, you need to rip the walls open, which I guess makes sense. But I think it's a byproduct of their monopoly. What if we had two energy companies? Would both need to inspect in case you connected to either? I think we need electrical inspectors within municipalities rather than NSP. Thanks, Colin. I appreciate the email, and I agree with you. We have a utility, a private company, essentially, utility, that is the final say on electrical connections in the province. Now, I think, every rule has an exception, right? I can understand when you're connecting to their grid, right? But shouldn't this be some sort of government agency that does this? Right? Shouldn't this be the responsibility of the Department of Energy or the municipality that you live in that has inspectors? I mean, we've got building inspectors, we've got all kinds of other inspections that happen. It blows my mind that and in the situation that our caller said, that they are like 2 kilometers from the nearest connection and have absolutely no intention of connecting to the system, that Nova Scotia Power could have said no to their occupancy permit. Like, sorry, we don't like your solar system. And that's the end of it. Does seem a bit odd, doesn't it? 902-405-6000-1-877-801-8255. Let's go back to the phones and welcome David to the show. David, how are you?
Hi. Oh, good. Thank you. Just taking off speaker there. Yeah, sorry. I actually missed that last caller about Nova Scotia Power. I know he sort of mentioned putting in a backup generator, I guess.
No,
so,
he's got he's completely off the grid. He's completely solar. Has absolutely no connection to Nova Scotia Power.
Yeah, like a backup generator for his solar power system. I assume
but it would be a gasser, right? It wouldn't be anything to do with them.
Yeah, no, that's it. Yeah, I guess it's sort of slightly related to that, but also my sort of call with the Premier about combined heat and power.
Sure.
And it's kind of relevant and showing some of the setbacks or hindrances we face is like micro combined heat and power devices. So basically, if you ever have your car, a gas engine, it produces a lot of heat and you have to have a radiator system to remove all the heat. Otherwise, your engine seizes up and stops working. Right. And it's the same with sort of, like a generator like that gentleman we'd be putting in as well too, but also part of the process, it just wastes a tremendous amount of heat along with the exhaust and just the unit itself getting hot and stuff like that. So combined heat and power basically captures that waste heat and puts it to good use. And I mean, sort of one advantage or disadvantage, however you look at it in Nova Scotia, is that part of our energy requirement is a large amount of heat for a number of months of the years and all year around as well when you take into consideration hot water. So, in terms of just not only just making immediate sort of emissions reductions and hopefully eliminating our need for centralized coal power plants, which are really inefficient and polluting, is decentralized electrical production based on combined heat and power devices. So someone would install a generator in their home to provide their own energy needs, and then the waste heat from that generator can be also used to provide their heat and hot water, which basically is providing that household with,
They would have to fuel the generator themselves, would they not?
Yeah, that's it. And I mean, ideally, that would be via like a natural gas connection or, propane you could get delivered as well, too, kind of thing. And so that's part of the advantage because not only is it sort of more efficient than, twice as efficient than a centralized power plant, if that changes from, say, coal, which is powering the centralized plant, and you can power it by sort of natural gas or propane, then you're also getting, 50% emissions reductions just by using that cleaner fuel. So, I mean, and extrapolating that I think sort of the ideal would be to have these systems grid connected. So they're constantly producing heat as you need it. But if they're producing surplus electricity because you're not using electricity at that moment, it sells it back to the grid. But obviously sort of that example sort of shows with Nova Scotia Power holding a monopoly, it does. That's a tremendous hindrance to that. But just in general too, one of the things the Premier sort of mentioned that, they're looking at wind, they're looking at solar, they're looking at everything. And I think what he was really trying to say, and sort of what I use to describe it, is an energy ecosystem. And just like in the natural ecosystems, depending on what region you're in, they can look vastly different, but it's sort of, those differences can also be an advantage. Say California has a different climate than Nova Scotia or Alberta, so we import from them fruits and vegetables that we can't really grow here well, and then we export to them things that we can grow here really well, wheats, grains, pulses, that kind of thing and stuff. And it's the same with sustainability as well too. What works in California is not going to be what works in Nova Scotia, and it's not going to be what works in Alberta or Ontario or anywhere else as well too. And one of the great sort of advantages we have here, or again disadvantages, is that we require a lot of heat. So we can take that waste heat from those sort of generating systems and put it to good use. Somewhere like California, which doesn't have the need for that waste heat, can't really use it as effectively. So I mean, those are the ideal places to have like your solar power, where you get sort of more sunshine hitting the earth anyway and stuff like that. And those sort of forms of alternatives. So I guess, it's kind of a long way of saying, too, that one of the ways we could sort of address this problem is with a sort of a cap and trade or emissions trading system that would sort of have us purchase carbon credits from sort of California, which would fund solar power development.
Carbon credits are gobbledygook. They mean nothing to me.
Okay, well, no, I mean, I'm taking up a lot of time here, but I will explain why it is a good thing, because, basically what we could purchase from them is the right to continue burning fossil fuels, gases, and that kind of thing.
But how does that fix the environment, David?
Well, because here, then we're capturing the waste heat, and then we're actually putting that to good use and significantly reducing our energy requirements, but we're also funding the solar power development there, where because of their climate and their weather and stuff like that, they get a much higher return out of it. So if you're looking at net global emissions, it's a much it's a much more sort of effective way to reduce those, and sort of every region just going at it on its own sort of way, and not sort of working together and stuff like that. So I say too, it's an energy ecosystem. So wind, solar, combined heat and power, heat pumps, all of that kind of stuff, all really feeds into each other, and the sort of surplus electricity generated by someone's combined heat and power system produces the electricity that will power somebody else's heat pump in another home. And then that heat pump, is producing significant emissions reductions over sort of just regular resistance-based heating and that kind of thing. So it's, there's just many ways to go about it. And, we just sort of need to consider all the options, I guess. So.
All right, sir. Appreciate it.
Yeah, all right. Thanks, Dad. Thank you. Bye-bye.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. I've never understood carbon credits. Is that just a way of making yourself feel good? Right? You can offset the carbon that you use for creating power by buying credits from somebody else. How does that help the environment? I get it. That we're looking at different ways and outside the box thinking, like David's talking about heat. But can you imagine everybody generating their own power? Just the cost per kilowatt hour, right? Running natural gas lines and so on and so forth. Are we just not kicking the can down the road? And B, when we start talking about buying credits from one place to another where they do something different, I don't where does the money go? And how does it fix the environment? These are all questions I had when we had the cap and trade system here in Nova Scotia not that long ago. Anyway, Dan, I'll shut up now. Let's go to the last word today, and we welcome Eric to the show. Eric, how are you?
Hey, Dan. Good. How are you?
Good. What's on your mind?
I'll just call every time first of all, I love listening to the show. You do a great job, and I listen every day, and every time I hear something new about Nova Scotia Power, I just get angrier and angrier. Right. I work as a building manager, and recently I took over a building that was still under construction, but we were at that stage where we could start moving people in. So you have to get Nova Scotia Power into the building. They do their inspections. They make sure everything's fine so that power can be set up. We started moving people in. It went sort of smoothly. Power got set up. There was a point the building was about 80% full, operating for almost a year. Passed the inspection. We had the permit number. We had given it to Nova Scotia Power, however, more times than I can count. Yet, consistently, we would have people who they'd book in their appointment to get the power set up weeks before they moved in, yet they show up to move in and their unit doesn't have power, the meter's not even installed. And for a company that seemingly get so much government support, no matter what the government likes to say. They get so much money, yet they are so mismanaged, and they can't even do the job properly when it is booked in. And I just can't understand how a big company like this, who has such a big responsibility, can keep getting away with not doing their job properly. If you have somebody working at McDonald's and they make a few mistakes, they could lose their job. That's somebody who needs that job to get by. Yet a CEO who's making millions out of this Nova Scotia Power never seems to have to face any true backlash for how inconsistent and unreliable they are. And it's especially unacceptable when we have no other alternatives. And I think eventually the government needs to step in and stop just being all talk and do something for the people and stop protecting this multi-million-dollar corporation.
I think you answered your own question, Eric. There is no other place to go, right? So they have there's zero accountability. Zero.
Exactly. It gets increasingly frustrating, and just thought I'd give my 2 cents as somebody who works with them directly a lot. One more thing, that one caller called about cars getting booted and how frustrating that can be. I don't know if this is true, but I wanted to share the information and maybe somebody can confirm it. I've been told many times that if a private company boots your car, you can call the Halifax police and they will show up and make them remove the boot for free for you. As it's one of those things where it's not illegal for them to do it, but the only time they get money is if basically, hopefully they're hoping that the person's uneducated and they pay the bill just in hopes to get their car out.
We'll reach out to HRP to see if that's the case, Eric. Hey, I appreciate it.
No worries at all. You take care, Dan.
That's going to do it for the open hour, folks. We're going to do this again tomorrow. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255 is the number. I look forward to our conversation. Time to stop, get an update on what's going on in the news. When we come back, we're going to switch gears a little bit and take a look at federal politics. Mark Carney returning to Canada after a whirlwind visit to the G20 and a meeting with between Canada and India on a trade deal. Are we still at odds in between our two countries? We'll find out when we have a conversation with political science professor from Dalhousie University, that being Lori Turnbull. You're listening to The Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. We're back in a minute. All right, welcome back. Glad you're able to spend some time with us this afternoon. It is Monday, and we're rolling you into your work week here as we look out the window, and I saw some flakes floating around out there earlier. It's just one of those dark November days, isn't it? Well, we know the Prime Minister has been in some more sunny places as of late, traveling to the Persian Gulf area, and now just returning from the G20 in South Africa. And G20 meetings are about getting FaceTime with different world leaders, both publicly on a stage and in front of the cameras, and then these so-called sideline events. This is where hey, haven't seen you for some time, and can I get you? Hey, let's sit down. I got something I want to share with you. Those kind of conversations. And apparently one of those conversations that happened, maybe I'm embellishing a little bit, but I'm sure Lori's going to laugh at that when we get her on the phone, is a conversation between our Prime Minister and the Prime Minister of India on trade. And if you remember back just a couple of years ago, there was some ill will, I will say, on behalf of our government and on behalf of the Indian government over the alleged hit that was ordered on Canadian soil, and apparently Mark Carney is willing to look past that to try and grow the economy. Lori Turnbull.
Yeah, this is going to be a tricky one, I think, for a lot of different reasons. But I think, from what it sounds like, the Prime Minister is really thinking about quite a broad, far-ranging relationship with India that is going to have an infrastructure around it, like a dispute resolution mechanism, things like that. I mean, it sounds like NASA. It sounds like there would be enough there that they would actually have to try to regulate it, like quite a bit, right? And so we'll see if it goes through. I mean, it certainly is going to be very controversial. Not everybody in Canada is going to be happy about this at all, regardless of what could come from it economically.
Obviously, the market of India is quite lucrative. There's just so many people that live there, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge economy. And at a moment where our relationship with the United States is so unpredictable, we're not even talking to them about trade right now. And so what the heck is going to happen with Kuzma, I have no idea. And so I think in the face of those negotiations that now have a big question mark over them, the conversation with India is kind of a game changer, because Carney's having all kinds of conversations with countries and picking up, building up potential trade partnerships. He signed something in the UAE last week for $70 billion. So this is not small change, but trying to, we're not going to replace the relationship with the U.S., but kind of if we it would have to be a pretty significant thing to get to a space where we are really able to offset our dependence on the U.S. in a meaningful way. So a big deal with India would be the type of thing I think he wants to put in the window.
Is, Mark Carney's kind of modus operandi of late has been about, more trade partners, growing the economy, big projects, big trade deals with people outside of the United States. Do you think that Canadians will stay on his side with this when we start talking about the more contentious countries like India?
So that's the question. Is basically, it seems to me, like this time last week, everybody was in a big hoopla about whether the budget vote was going to pass. And of course it was going to pass, but it was all this suspense because they had a minority and you weren't sure who was going to stay home so that they'd be able to pass on their own and all that stuff. But the real show is not the budget. It's not what's going on in Parliament. It's what the Prime Minister is doing abroad. And typically, we don't see elections in Canada being defined by what we consider to be foreign policy, right? Like our relationships with other countries, other than like the NAFTA election in 1988 kind of thing, typically it's not the be-all and end-all. Usually our elections are fought on very domestic issues like affordability and healthcare and things like that. And so is the Prime Minister going to find a language to be able to take what he's doing abroad and make it relevant here? Because we hear these numbers, right? Like, okay, $70 billion. Well, what does that really mean? And how does that affect me, right? Like in us and what people's families and people's bottom line. Like he has to find a way to translate that into things that are kind of concrete for people and to take down this false dichotomy of foreign and domestic policy. And that's very tricky, right? Like it's a very difficult thing to do. And I don't think he's got concrete enough stuff happening now to really be able to do it, but that's going to be his challenge.
And where we're talking in these tens of millions of hundreds of millions of dollars, I don't think the average, I can use myself as an example, I have no idea what that means to an economy the size of Canada or a GDP or anything along those lines.
Of course, 100%. And you don't know what it means like on a sector by sector basis or on a province by province basis. Like it's the, what does that mean for me question, right? Like how does a partnership with the UAE or India or whatever affect the housing crisis, the affordability crisis, our steel and aluminum industry, softwood lumber, like what's going to happen with all that stuff. And that's where those are election questions. Like those are what is, that's what's going to drive the debate in an election campaign.
I can tell you an industry that does know what these global policies has an impact, and that is our lobster industry. And as you well know, Lori, it's dumping day today. That means the fishers are getting out there and dropping their lobster traps in an effort to try and get a big catch and sell it. And we know that global tensions have had an impact on that industry for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Like we're all vulnerable, and I think the situation with the U.S. has really focused us on the questions of international markets and how to make sure we're competitive and how we can take care of ourselves. And I mean, I think it remains to be seen what the Team Canada approach is going to look like too as we go forward. Like we're talking about the lobster industry, like all the provinces are looking at, how can we protect ourselves? What are we going to get out of these major projects? They're talking about a pipeline now that, Alberta to BC. The Premier BC doesn't want it. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith can't wait to see it. I think all the provinces are going to be looking at, like, what are going to be the protections for us. And we're at a really vulnerable time.
Paraphrasing, of course, Prime Minister Carney asked this weekend or late last week about when he plans to sit down with the American president again. He's like, "No, I'm good for now. I think we're all right." Is that him trying to be a little bit more strong-handed with Donald Trump?
Well, I read it as he knows he can't keep going and coming back with nothing.
Right.
I took it as, like, it's actually draining his political capital if he shows up at the White House and comes back with no deal. And I think that's correct. I think he'd be not in a good space politically if he keeps knocking on that door.
But the negotiations obviously continue. I mean, I think Dominic LeBlanc has a secondary residence in Washington now, doesn't he?
Yeah. Well, I mean, after Doug Ford ran that commercial about Ronald Reagan, Trump got upset and he says, we're not going to talk about trade anymore. And so maybe there's still conversations happening somewhere, but officially we are not moving towards a trade deal with the U.S. at this point. Like, as far as Donald Trump is concerned, nope, he's not interested in having those conversations. Maybe at some point that'll change. I mean, I have to think that Kuzma negotiations there's going to be some like lift off there at some point. But right now, I think that the Prime Minister is trying to avoid, again, the sense that we are talking to the U.S. and we're getting nothing out of it, and we are not really a player in the conversation. I mean, I heard months ago, like even after the summer of where we were we were going down there. Minister LeBlanc was going a lot. There was lots of back and forth. I mean, I heard nothing was being moved, and so I don't know. I think we can see the Prime Minister at the G20 this weekend. The conversation was, hey, we can do this without the U.S. Like he said that. Other world leaders said that. So we might be on the precipice of a pretty significant shift.
You mentioned Kuzma, Lori, and that process is just 6 months away now. Is this going to be a bare knuckle fight when we get down to brass tacks?
I'm wondering if the U.S. is going to come to the table.
Really?
Like I'm wondering what this is really going to look like, because Donald Trump, I mean, we know even in the first round, even the first term for Donald Trump, he didn't like NAFTA. He said it was the worst deal ever, and the way he goes on with these big claims of things being big and bad and all that stuff. But I don't see necessarily that he is committed to that at all. And I think, like, even at Halifax this past weekend, there was some American representatives. He had told top defense officials not to go to the Halifax Security Forum, but some Congress people did go. Some politicians did go. And the message from them is basically it's all Canada's fault, right? And Canada's the one who hasn't been stepping up. We're the ones who are in arrears on our NATO payments, and that's nice that we want to come to the table now. But what about the $300 billion we owe from having not paid enough in the past? And so that sort of attitude is not just about Trump. Maybe they're kind of trying to impress him, but I think that the sense that Canada is not a good partner is pervasive in the U.S. political community. And so I don't know what to expect when it's Kuzma o'clock. I'm not sure.
If that happens and the clock strikes midnight on Kuzma o'clock, I like that. That could be huge for our economy because a lot of our goods are protected under that deal, right?
Exactly. Like, as much as I do not mean to undermine at all how tariffs have affected steel, aluminum, softwood lumber, but a lot of our goods, like I heard the statistic, everybody, like, there's statistics flying everywhere, right? But like 85%-ish of our goods are protected under Kuzma, so we haven't had the kind of impact that we might have in the event and we would have in the event that deal is no longer applicable. The Prime Minister himself has said, despite everything, we still have the best deal with the U.S., but I mean, is that going to last?
We'll have to keep our eyes on it. Lori, appreciate your time.
Anytime. Thanks for having me.
That is Lori Turnbull, political science professor from Dalhousie University. I never even had considered that. Been so many other things and so much other noise with the ongoing tariff dispute between our two countries. I had never considered that the Americans might just say, no, thanks, when it comes to renegotiating Kuzma. And then can you imagine what that means? I'm paraphrasing, and I don't have the exact number, but a significant majority of the goods that travel between Canada and the United States are protected under CUSMA and aren't currently being tariffed, outside of the things that Lori talked about, like the steel, the aluminum, the softwood lumbers. And if that deal comes off, holy smokes, right? Let's hope cooler heads prevail. We're going to stop and take another break. You're listening to The Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. We're back in minutes. Well, we talked about it earlier today, and this is the week that a lot of shoppers are looking forward to, because it is the now famous Black Friday, and it's going to be pandemonium as the Americans go on their Thanksgiving long weekend on Thursday, and then Friday is the day that my understandings of the origin of it were that was the day where retailers moved from the red to the black. And then they were able to, the rest of the money they made through the season was profit. I don't know if that was just an old wives' tale or if that was the case, but I don't think that's the case anymore, because Black Friday is no longer a day. Black Friday has become a month. And many businesses, including small and medium-sized businesses in Nova Scotia, tried to take advantage of the Black Friday craze, and more power to them, right? If they can get more people into the store, that's good. But did you know that the day after Black Friday is Small Business Saturday? I bet you didn't. And the CFIB is putting together a campaign to help us with Small Business Saturday, and we're very pleased to welcome back to the program the Vice President of CFIB Atlantic. That's Louis-Philippe Gauthier. Louis, how are you?
I'm quite well. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, my pleasure. So we get wrapped up in Black Friday, do we not, as a consumer and even as perhaps a shop owner, as the shopping craze begins?
We all do as consumers, and of course for many, many, many small businesses, at least 1 in 3 of them, this period of the year is very important. It allows them to essentially make the money they need for the leaner months in January and February. So that's why we've been highlighting Small Business Saturday for quite a few years at this point. And hopefully consumers will be conscious about where they spend their hard-earned money.
And that was my next question. What's the genesis behind this, and is the goal to get out and support small businesses, and particularly the local ones?
Yes. So from our perspective, we've got some amazing partners, and seeing in the data that we've seen and that we still see at this point, for example, in Nova Scotia, the biggest limiting factor as of this month for our members, at least what they're reporting to us, is that there's a lack in consumer demand. So as consumers are watching their dollars, costs are up, businesses are living the same realities. And even with the interest over the last few months of buying Canadian because of what was happening with our neighbors to the south, we continue on saying, well, when you're spending $1, be conscious where you spend it. Because when you spend $1 in a small business in Nova Scotia, for example, well, 66 cents remains within the community compared to $11 when you go to the big box multinational stores. So we're just asking consumers, celebrate, support your businesses in your communities, and we do that on Small Business Saturday, which is in just a few days.
Optimism out there, to say the least, is a little bit flat this year as we head into it, though, isn't it?
It's gone up a little bit during this month based on the data we released last week, but it is still below normal. The reality, the economy is sluggish. As I mentioned, consumers are pressed with costs. Businesses are as well. So that's translating in lower spending. And from a business perspective, just like consumers, they've got red on increased pressure on many of the items on the books. So that's why this season is just as important as when we were going through the period of hyperinflation over a year and a half ago and during the pandemic.
Some good news for small, medium-sized businesses late last week when we learned of potential labor peace at Canada Post.
Yes, I'd say we were quite happy to hear that this might be completely resolved for the period. It's not easy for businesses that use Canada Post as a way to communicate to their customers their products when it's not operating. And from our perspective, we've been maintaining that there needs to be changes at Canada Post to make it sustainable. So at least hopefully this will translate and support a better season as we head into the holidays.
CFIB's put together a website to give us as consumers a bit of a helping hand as we move into Small Business Saturday.
Yes, it's smallbusinesseveryday.ca. So there's contests, there are different opportunities. But what is easy enough for consumers to do is just to be a conscious consumer. Where am I spending my dollar? And to look around in their communities for the small businesses that are there and supporting their environment. So being able to think, well, all right, I'm not only getting something for a loved one, but I'm also supporting my local small business as I plan for the gifts that are going to be given over the holidays.
Mr. Gauthier, appreciate your time, sir.
My pleasure.
That is Louis-Philippe Gauthier, the Vice President Atlantic for CFIB. Going to take a break, get an update on the news on the other side of it. Two places in HRM that are getting some attention of developers. One of them is Sandy Lake. The other is right on the edge of Blue Mountain Birch Cove Lakes. We're going to dig into these two proposals with the Senior Wilderness Outreach Coordinator over at the Ecology Action Centre. Karen McKendry will be your guest. You're listening to The Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Olstrand. We're back in minutes. Welcome back. A couple of these so-called special planning areas have come to the forefront with public hearings and meetings this month, taking the lid off of, at least for the broader public, on some of these proposals that are being planned, perhaps talked about for a couple of pretty pristine areas in HRM. One of them is right on the edge of Blue Mountain Birch Cove Lakes. The other one is at Sandy Lake in Bedford, and both public meetings, from what I could gather out of it, were well attended, and some people raising some very serious concerns about these developments. And they're not just little developments. These things are quite large developments, 11,000 units plus infrastructure, and in some of them it certainly has raised a few eyebrows, including the eyebrows of our next guest. Please welcome to the program from the Ecology Action Centre, Senior Wilderness Outreach Coordinator. That's Karen McKendry. Karen, how are you?
Hello, I'm doing well, Dan.
This let's start with Sandy Lake. This isn't a small development. It's quite large.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to get a handle on the number of what's proposed because there's slightly different numbers from HRM, from the developer, and from background reports done by consultants, but in the realm of potentially 10,000 units in that area on the west side of Sandy Lake. So that's getting to the population level of the town of Truro. And then, as you mentioned, another area the size of Truro, population-wise, proposed just a couple kilometers away next to the Blue Mountain Birch Cove Lakes Wilderness area. So massive developments, not small ones.
Now, the second one that you were talking about, that one kind of would live between Highway 102 and the boundary of the park, correct?
Yeah, I would have a couple entrances, but I mean, there's an area that's protected there already, Blue Mountain Birch Cove Lakes Wilderness area, and some land that's owned by HRM as part of a regional park they committed to a long time ago. But going back over 50 years, there's a vision of a larger area protected there. So much of those still wild lands are still like ecologically intact, and groups have been working towards that larger vision for quite a number of years now.
What's the concerns here, Karen? We know we're in a housing crisis. We know that we need more places for people to live. Why is these developments? Why are they considered to be a bad idea?
Yeah, we are absolutely in a housing affordability crisis. The affordability adjective really matters. And people are in a furor about these areas for a couple of reasons. One is that they've long been proposed for protection, and there has been work towards those, but there's still wild areas left on the edges there that need to be protected to keep it intact. And we do need development, but this type of development, greenfield development, where you have like wild places like a forest that gets bulldozed and then infrastructure gets put in and houses, is the most expensive form of development for us all. So sprawl costs us all. So the province and HRM pay for a lot of the infrastructure that goes in these areas, and then we pay for that in our taxes. And then, the developer makes a profit from developing that area, and HRM makes some property taxes, but they never fully make back what we all paid into it. There are other areas in the city where there already is the infrastructure, like pipes and transit and, amenities and stuff that are way less expensive for us to carry the burden of, that could house just as many people. And those areas aren't being fast-tracked, yet these areas are being fast-tracked by the province. So that's partly what people are upset about there.
And then also that it's the province that's behind this and have created these special planning areas, which essentially would bypass city council, would it not?
Yeah, so people are definitely viewing that process as anti-democratic. So a normal way for development to go forward is for a developer to own and propose an area, for HRM planners to take a look at that. HRM planners then get consultants and others to do all that background work, like how would the traffic work and where would the lights go and what would Halifax Water have to put in. And then they roll that up in a staff report saying, if development were to go ahead here, our professional expertise is that you should do it this way, and it should be this many units, and you need this many more bus routes. So that's a totally normal way for development to proceed. Then that is presented in the public sphere, and then HRM councillors vote on that, and there's also a public hearing. That final democratic part has been removed and sort of hijacked by the Task Force on Housing and HRM and the Minister of Housing, which is currently John White. So this process has been happening for a few select areas for several years. People might remember what happened at Eisner's Cove wetland when this process went ahead. So it's a really hard process for the public to interject itself into and have a say, and arguably it's undemocratic.
And in an effort to try and get information out, there have been a couple of information sessions on both of these sites as of late.
Yeah, so HRM is following a normal procedure for urban planners where they have a small public participation session that has been sort of curtailed or shortened or made smaller because the province is breathing down their neck. So both for Sandy Lake and for the Blue Mountain area, they had a one-day open house where people could come have a say. So those were very well attended. But also at both of those, community groups rented an adjacent room in the same building to also present publicly available information that wasn't going to be showcased by HRM or the province. So there was lots of engagement. I would say over 200 people at both of those one-day sessions, which is pretty good for an HRM open house. But those people also engaged with the community groups that were bringing forward points of view like, how could this impact flooding downstream, and what is anybody doing about the wildlife corridors here? So yeah, people had tough questions for HRM and for the developers, and then the province was absent from those open houses.
Karen, what's next steps here? Where do we go now that these meetings have been held? Is it do we wait for a decision? Is that really all we can do?
Well, I can tell you what the next step should be and what people should expect and call for. Normally in an HRM process like this, after they do public engagement like the open house they did, they also have a survey on their website. So they gather information a couple different ways. A couple months later, they write a what we heard report. So this is like an authentic report of everything government heard, the good and the bad and the outstanding questions. And that is available in the public sphere. That is what should happen next, but we just don't know because of this hijacked process, whether the province will allow that what we heard report to come out or whether they'll just see it secretly. So people, in a democratic society should call for that what we heard report to come out, and then we'll have the public's point of view, and then the province is supposed to integrate that as well as the information from HRM in potentially making a decision about these places in the next 2 years.
It's interesting. We had an interview with the Premier on Friday, and he said we're going to let the process take care of itself. Well, the process doesn't seem to involve a lot of public input.
You got it, Dan. There's been a lot of foisting on this is HRM and this is their process. And those, urban planners are doing the best they can. They have a professional oath to seek input from the public, and they are following their normal processes. But you have to know that at the end, it's going in a very, kind of bullying direction where the province is just going to be like, thanks for all that info, urban planners, and now we're going to take this behind closed doors and make our own decisions.
And then who knows what's next, right? Because this government has had a track record of entertaining plans for protected spaces like parks in the past.
Yeah, and they have, as you would say, track record of the last couple of years of exceptional interference and overstep into municipal planning. So the task force and the special planning areas aren't the only thing that's happened in the last 3 years where they're just like, yoink, let's take this power away from the municipality and decide for ourselves.
Karen, I appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
That is Karen McKendry, Senior Wilderness Outreach Coordinator at the Ecology Action Centre, 11,000 units and 11,000 units plus at both Sandy Lake and at the boundary of the Blue Mountain Birch Cove Lakes corridor. You know where that is. That one runs along Highway 102, kind of between Kearney Lake Road and Lacewood / Chain Lake Drive, with some entrances and exits. And I would suggest, and I haven't seen the plans, but the road engineering work there is going to be a bit of a challenge, considering the amount of traffic that carries on that road and the amount of traffic that carries itself into the Bears Lake shopping area, right? And how the plans are and what the plans are to deal with that moving forward. Getting ready to take another break here on the program. When we come back, McInnes Cooper, the law firm here in HRM, raising concerns now over proposed veterans legislation changes. We'll have a conversation with partner at McInnes Cooper. That's Daniel Wallace when we return. You're listening to The Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. We're back in a minute. All right, welcome back. As I've mentioned numerous times here, since the federal budget was dropped and it's now been passed, in the House of Commons, there was a 400-page document, and there are always, when there's that much legislation or that much verbiage in a document, there's always these little things that are there but maybe go unnoticed because they get overshadowed by the bigger announcements in the budget, and those were, of course, the deficit and the $80 billion in spending for the military and all of that. But on Remembrance Day, if you can remember back, there was a conversation about the changes that were in the budget with regards to the way that the indexing formula for veterans benefits works. Now, the old way would be that they would use either the cost of living increase, the consumer price index, or the average, or an average of a basket of a bunch of public service salaries, and they would take whichever of those is greater. But the change that was in the budget changes that, and now it's only going to be based on CPI, and that has raised the ire of a lot of the country's veterans, people in my circles, people in other circles in the veterans community, and McInnes Cooper, the law firm here, has also raised some concerns over the proposed veterans legislation, and we're very pleased to welcome partner at McInnes Cooper. That is Daniel Wallace to the show. Daniel, appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me here.
So, am I correct? Is that what the change was? Is they threw out the basket of other departments' raises and are going based purely on consumer price index now?
Well, it's a little bit more nuanced than that, in that it's still the choice between the greater of this consumer price index and the basket of public servant salaries after tax. But what they did was they changed how that formula would work, and they would say prior to or currently until this legislation is passed, it is after tax in the the province or territory with the lowest taxes. Anytime the word province appears in a law, it includes the 3 territories. But what the government is intending to do is make a change. And what's particularly worrisome for veterans and for, frankly, all Canadians is that the change is going to be made retroactively.
Right.
So the formula has been a certain way for decades. And, we say that Veterans Affairs has been misapplying it and either overcharging veterans for some benefits or overcharging them for some things and then underpaying them for other benefits as a result of misapplying this formula, which we say is quite clear. And so we've filed a lawsuit, 2 lawsuits, in fact, and are asking for a federal court judge to decide or to determine what the proper way to do it is. And the federal government, as opposed to, either settling the case or seeing us in court and making their arguments, they've decided to change the rules halfway through the game. And so they're saying, going all the way back to 1985, they're saying, well, actually, where it says province, it doesn't include the territories, it just includes the 10 provinces. And it's always been that way. So they're really just changing the rules and changing veterans' benefits going back decades, as opposed to, it's one thing to do it going forward, and that's a conversation that, the federal government should have with the veterans community and whether that's appropriate. But they have not had that conversation. But what's particularly worrisome here is the retroactive nature of it and saying, Canadians read laws and they're entitled to, pay taxes and receive benefits based on those laws. And they should not expect for the government to go back years, or in this case, decades, and change things. And that's particularly the case for these benefits, which are, intended to help veterans and to recognize, as the statute says, the sacrifice that these veterans have given to the country. So to change these retroactively is you can insert the word there, but I think it's quite egregious and disappointing. I'm sure your viewers and listeners have some ideas.
I was saying it under my breath, Daniel, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah.
This could cost veterans like a ton of cash.
It really could. Now, one of the things that the government, in our opinion, are overcharging veterans for is long-term care homes. So these are folks usually towards the end of their lives. And the government has, in our opinion, been overcharging them over $3,000 a year. So that is significant money, and it can add up. And so we've filed a lawsuit to take them to court and get that money back that these veterans have overpaid. And now, with this, if this legislation passes, those veterans will never get a chance to have their day in court. So it's really, as a lawyer, it's really worrisome to have someone's rights determined halfway through the court process for the government just making a law. But the fact that these folks, are veterans, many of them were World War II veterans, and they're currently in Camp Hill or similar institutions across Canada, and they're being overcharged up to $3,000 a year. And frankly, that's not right. And the government should fix their mistake, or at the very least, ask the court to determine whether or not a mistake has been made. But to go back and retroactively make this change is, quite insulting to these veterans and all Canadians.
Doesn't even feel like it's legal, to be honest.
Well, it shouldn't be. It really shouldn't be. And I wouldn't say it's on precedent, but it's very, very rare for the government to change a rule retroactively. Again, it's particularly rare where the recipients of these benefits are so deserving of them.
So your opinion that they're being overcharged is $3,000. That could be if you're correct and the court's rule in your favor. This could be a multi-million-dollar payout, right?
It could be, yes. And this is money that they should have been receiving all along,
right?
It was money that was paid out of their pockets that we said shouldn't have been. And again, we just want our day in court. We want these veterans to have their day in court, and I don't think that's too much to ask. So to have their legal rights taken from them retroactively is really disappointing. And what's particularly disappointing is, this isn't the legislation that's passed, with the full discussion of Parliament and on, the pros and cons of it and discussions with the veterans community. It's something that's tucked into the Budget Implementation Act, which is, looking at it here, it's 609 pages, and it starts at page 440, and it's 2 or 3 pages where these terms are in here that affect these disabled veterans and affect their rights dating back decades, and it's just slipped in, and there hasn't been any discussion from the government and any explanation, frankly, about why they're doing this.
So as it stands right now, Daniel, the lawsuit process is underway, and the federal government changed the playing field on you, but you're still moving forward.
We're still moving forward. The legislation hasn't passed yet. It's going through the first, I think its second reading is coming up next. So we would ask people that are interested in this issue and care about it to contact their members of parliament and their senators and just, express their concern about what's happening here. There's a couple benefits. One of them affects tens of thousands of people. One of them affects over 100,000 Canadians that are receiving monthly disability benefits from Veterans Affairs, right. And that would be Canadian Armed Forces and RCMP members and veterans, so and their widows as well. So there's a lot of people affected here, and at the very least, the government owes them an explanation of why their benefits aren't what we say they should be, or at least why they're changing the rules halfway through the game.
Again, it just doesn't feel like that's the spirit of the law, right? Yeah,
it's pretty shocking. Frankly, and I've never seen anything like this. I've been practicing law for about 20 years, and my colleague said it's a thermonuclear attempt. Instead of seeing us in court and making arguments, which they're of course entitled to do, and to say, look, we think we've been doing it correctly, and asking the judge to decide, they've just taken it out of the court's hands and are just deciding it here with a few terms tucked inside a 609-page budget document.
Well, I can tell you the veterans community and those still serving in the military, when they hear the word retroactive, it always sends chills up their spines.
Well, and rightly so. I mean, they earn these benefits. They were told, I speak to a lot of veterans every day, and they say, when we signed on the dotted line, we were told we'd always be taken care of, and they had these benefits out here. So it had those benefits changed, halfway through the lawsuit, but after they've served, and a lot of these folks have served, 20 years, 30 years plus, and suffer injuries as a result of their service. And now the government of Canada is saying, well, actually, the calculation is different than you thought it was. And we're going to change it. And we're going to change it going back to 1985.
Daniel, keep us in the loop, okay?
Of course. Thank you for your interest.
That is Daniel Wallace. He's a partner at McInnes Cooper. Dig into it, folks. I know that there are plenty of veterans out there listening today. It's not just the people at Camp Hill and those in long-term care. This is the benefits for everybody, folks. And and I can attest to that. We were told that when you'd always be looked after, and that just doesn't feel like we're always being looked after. That's going to do it for the Monday edition of the Todd Veinotte Show. Thanks to Vanessa Vandenez on the other side of the glass. Fantastic work, as always. Get out there and enjoy Nova Scotia. We're so lucky to live in the place that we do. Until then, everybody, please be well. And remember, be kind to one another.